Hey everyone, welcome to the Stanislavski Carcosa channel again. We're going to have another chat about acting technique and specifically physical movement and physical frameworks as an actor. Now, the technique that is prescribed in most of Europe for dealing with naturalistic plays and increasingly in America is the method of physical actions as prescribed by Stanislavski. That means essentially aiming to create the physical life of a character along with their will or their objectives and their given circumstances, their tactics, and then via that drawing out emotional work. That contrasts against what would be loosely termed method, which is looking at emotions and trying to generate emotions and the will, objectives and given circumstances and so on, and using that to generate behaviour. So to use method of physical actions, you need a physical life. Now, just to be very, very clear, a physical life does not mean choreography. It doesn't mean that you decide what you're going to do physically in terms of your movement on stage. It's about the quality of your movement and the way in which you physically create your character's movement qualities. So there are a number of ways of doing that. I'm not going to go over them now. I'm going to talk about LMA, which is Laban Movement Analysis, which was developed by the choreographer Rudolf Laban and is one of the most commonly taught ways of finding that physical framework. But there are also other ways, tempo rhythm centers, looking at specific photographs if you're doing a historical piece. A really good video for this is the one that the National Theatre created with Vanessa Ewan, looking at the different ways of physicalizing Nora from the play Doll's House. I strongly recommend you look at that video for any kind of summary of different approaches to a movement framework in a method of physical actions style. What I'm going to focus on in this discussion is the relationship between your technique and your physical life, and the meeting place for that is in the tactic. A tactic is how you go about achieving your unit level objective. So it should be a doing word. There are lots of sort of actus thesauruses, and the book Actions is the most well-known one, in which you get a kind of almost like thesaurus-like list of different actions that are similar to other types of actions that are ways that you can go about pursuing an objective. And what's often taught is that you have an objective and you have maybe 2 or 3 different tactics that in the moment a performer can choose to go with that. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's quite a good approach to take. I think also the idea of having a character tactics pool that are the go-to tactics for that character of about 8 to 10 or maybe 8 to 12 different types of action or types of tactic that a character is most likely to take when pursuing most strong objectives. I think that's a particularly good way to go about things because it means that there is character consistency. But here's the relation. I'll do some demonstrations today. Here's the way that a relationship can go between tactics and objectives. So let's go back to the kind of example that we were using in a previous video, and so we've got a line that's where are the books, or where is the body? We'll use books because it's less morbid in this difficult time. So let's say the line is where are the books, and it's in prison. It's an interrogation scene. So we'll say I want the suspect to feel scared. Very simple objective is my objective. So what's a good tactic? Well, you can use any tactic at all, really. I would say in the same way that an objective that describes what you're doing is bad, in the same way a tactic that describes what you're doing is also bad. So for instance, in the same way that if the line is where are the books, the objective where I want to find out where the books are is a bad objective. The same way question is a bad tactic because you're just describing what you're doing. So let's say where are the books? No reason to overthink it. Something like interrogate is a perfectly viable tactic for that. Intimidate, dominate. Another thing to say though, any action that means something to you, if you think of what I've written in my examples, I put press, mince, as in mince, like grind something up. Grind would be another one. Blend, stew, discomfort. These are all different words where maybe that's not the way that you'd describe those things. But if I have a sense of ness, a sense of imagery conjured by that particular word, then that's a perfectly viable tactic, even if it wouldn't necessarily be a particularly good way of describing to another person. You know, you can even think of it in terms of, okay, my tactic now is kind of to, I mean, that would be kind of what sometimes we term a psychological gesture, but I think that's a viable way to think of tactics. So let's go with discomfort. So I want the suspect to feel scared. My tactic is going to be to discomfort them. So does that mean that I end up doing the same thing? No, it doesn't, because what it may be the case is that my physical framework, let's say I'm predominantly, to use LMA language, a press character that's dominated by a physical framework of press, I'll probably apply that tactic of discomfort, something like, where are the books? As my physical framework. If my physical framework tends towards the glide, my discomfort would probably be, let's go with, where are the books? Oh, my base level physical framework is different. I'm still going with the tactic of discomfort. I want him to feel scared, and I'm discomforting him or her. Let's say my base level LMA action is to slash most of the time. Where are the books? Something like that. Or if it's to flick, where are the books? So those are all the same tactic, or the same tactic from my point of view, and you'll end up with something a million different ways, and you could engage in any of these a million different ways. But that's where your technique of objectives, tactics, given circumstances, and so on, should meet your physical framework. And I've used the most basic physical framework you can have, which is to just have one effort action, which is not really how things would go. You'd probably have a couple that were engaged during a scene, and maybe in dissonance between one that's kind of a bit more internal and one that's a bit more external. You know, let's say equally, I'm gonna be let's go back to that pressing character and say I'm gonna have a high external tempo, but still engage with press. Where are the books? I'm going to stay with press. I'm going to lower my internal tempo a lot, but still go with I want the suspect to feel scared, and still go with discomfort. Where are the books? So that, again, a collection of different things, and that's how I'm going. And you can put together those different things if you want to use photographs, if you want to use tempo rhythm, if you want to use any combination of effort actions. You find the moment of physical framework alignment with technique and planned technique, and who your character is and how you characterize that by the relationship between your method of physical actions, preferred physical life, and the action or tactic that you're taking. I hope that provides a pretty good template. We'll leave it there because that's quite a lot of stuff, and I hope that's of use, and I'll see you next time. Thank you, and stay safe.